Hello, everyone. It's Nick again, and today we're going to talk about Power Pages, of course. I do know other things, apparently, but this is something that I've been working a lot with. We're going to talk about content snippets. Now, I have another video on content snippets. I've talked about content snippets before. You've maybe even heard me in my presentations when I talk about content snippets. It's one of these things that I feel doesn't get enough attention, yet they're very powerful. What exactly are they? Just a quick little recap before we dive in. Content snippets, they can be code, they can be bits of text, they can be a bunch of other things that we can insert into our web pages in our Power Pages site. So for example, I have this very simple welcome message here. I have the website and it's an HTML, and I have my HTML code here, which of course I can go in and edit in Visual Studio Code. Very simple, using just H4 tags. If I look at this in Visual Studio Code, I could go in and begin to design a whole bunch of code around this if it's going to be HTML based, and I can take that code and we can inject that into the website. So great for little paragraphs, bits of snippets. We can even add liquid code and other code into this. So very powerful. Key thing I want to talk about content snippets though, which really makes them powerful, is the ability to set the content snippet language. Here I have English. That's my base language, but I could create a Power Pages site with multiple languages. It becomes very tedious to actually have to translate each of these bits of text, and they could be all over the place. So if you go and design a web page and create all the text and the graphics and everything there, but then you have to translate that, well, then what you're going to have to do is basically take all that, go in, create another content page for the other particular language, cut and paste, do the translation. It becomes very tedious. If you use content snippets, you could build the entire structure of your web page, either the web page or another web template, and use those content snippets in lieu of just regular hard-coded text. And then it is going to look at the language of the user that's browsing there, or the language of their browser, and show that content in that language. So that's very cool. Up until this point, in order to insert a content snippet into a page or a web template, you had to go into code. And again, I have nothing wrong with code, and probably many of you are pretty used to it. When building websites, you do need to have a certain level of code. And I'm going to dive into some here as well. But from our maker's perspective, that becomes a little bit maybe overwhelming. So if I take a look at the Design Studio, and this is typically where we would design brand new websites and web pages, from the maker's perspective, we have this thing where we can, onto a section, we can add a component. We could add text, a button, image, card gallery, plus a bunch of other data components. Now, if I were just to add text here to this particular section, that's great. I could put in the text. I can even get Copilot to generate this text for me. But then when it comes time to translate it, I'm going to have to go into that web page and actually find that code using the Power Pages management app and do all that translation. It becomes very tedious to go hunt around for all these different web pages. If I could build this web page just once, but then use content snippets, well, then I can just have to have everything in one spot. I can just translate all my content snippets. From a maker's perspective, I have something that I've asked the product team multiple times, is the ability to have a content snippet here. I can go spacers, iframes, multi-step forms. Wouldn't it be great if I could just click and add a content snippet here, just pick it from a list and inject it directly into my web page? That would be great. That way I could build web pages that are multilingual capable. Can't do that. But wait a minute, we have this new thing, custom components. What's that? So I thought of the other day, what if I could build a custom component that could inject a content snippet on a page? So let's take a look. So I'm on a completely different website here. I'm going to go in, I want to add a new component. I have all the regular ones that we just looked at on the other page. Look at this. We have the ability to add a content snippet here. How cool is that? Now, that is a custom component that I created. I'm going to share that code with you in a few minutes, but let's just see how this works. I can just click here, add my custom component, and it's going to add that custom control directly to my web page. Now, I still have to pick what my content snippet is. So I have to go into edit custom component here. And then here I've got a parameter adding the content snippet. So of course I want to put in my welcome message. That's done. And you see here I have, this is the English welcome message. And if I were to go and preview this on site, we would see that come through. And here we see, this is the English welcome message. That's a content snippet. That's great. I added that user component. I just put in the content snippet name, which of course, that becomes a little bit of a problem because it's like, okay, I need to memorize what all these content snippets are, or what if I forget? So of course, what you probably are thinking, you have to go into the Power Pages management app, go into content snippets, basically find the content snippet that you want to inject and copy that, or go in and create a new one. I've configured this code so there's a little bit of a shortcut to get there. So if I go back into the Design Studio here, we have this other one, Edit Data. And if I click on that Edit Data button, and this is part of custom components, is we see that the associated table is Content Snippet. If I click on Content Snippet here, this is taking me directly into the data workspace. It's actually showing me the Content Snippet table, so I can go in and actually make changes. So here, if I were to go into this welcome message, I could move over here. This is the English welcome message. Maybe we want to do some edits here, make the English capitalized, and maybe do something like an explanation point there. I'm going to we're just going to tab off that. So it's going to save, and it's saving up here. We see the data is saved, and let's just do a little preview, which of course clears the cache. And we see here that my content snippet's been updated. So I'm able to edit that directly in the Design Studio using the data workspace. Of course, here, if I want to go in again, edit the data content snippet, and I even could go in and create new rows here. I do have that ability, so I can create new ones. The other cool thing is if I do select my welcome message here, I also have this edit row using a form. So this is actually going to take me directly to the same form that we use in the Power Pages management app. So a lot of these little things, nice little shortcuts in order to create and edit content snippets. All right, let's get into the code, see how we did this, how this magic all worked. I'm going to go into back into the Power Pages management app, or actually I could let's go into Visual Studio. I've always had the one here open. I'm just going to close this. I'm going to navigate to my web templates. Now, of course, if you recall from other videos, you can't create new web templates in the web version of Visual Studio Code, but you can in the desktop version. So if you're using the desktop version, you can create those web templates there. I have this one here, content snippet. And so let's take a look at what this code looks like. So I have some comments in here. This code, by the way, is on the associated blog that goes with this video. So you're able to get that code there. I'll probably throw this up on GitHub as well at some point. But basically, first thing we have to look at is this manifest. Now, the manifest is something that's key to web template components. If you're done this before, you probably understand the manifest. Here we need to give it some parameters. It is a functional. That's the only one that's available right now. Display name, content snippet. Again, you can call it whatever you want. Has a description. The tables here, this is where I actually specified the MSPP _ content snippet table, which of course is a virtual table to the metadata, which will take us to the content snippets in the Design Studios to allow us to go in and create new content snippets or edit directly, more or less in the Design Studio without leaving it. We have some other parameters that we're passing. I've just passed the ID of snippet because we're going to use that later, display name, and the description. So this basically is where the users would be able to enter in that text. I'd love to have a lookup here tied to the table. We're not quite there yet, but that'd be pretty cool. And then basically that's it for the manifest. I'm only getting one parameter. And then basically this is the code that does everything. I basically taking that name snippet here, that information, I'm using the liquid tag snippets to basically display that code on my Power Pages site. Very simple web template component, but I think this is pretty powerful. It actually is going to speed up some development in terms of makers being able to use content snippets. Let me know what you think. Maybe you think this is a little bit overkill, but I think this is a pretty neat thing in order to be able to use web templates as components and to kind of get the things that we've been asking Microsoft for, like inserting content snippets. I'm really keen to see what other web template components that you folks might be building. Be cool to start building maybe a community library of these things, and we can kind of give our makers the ability to create some really cool Power Pages websites. That's it for now. Look forward to the next one, and thank you for listening and watching.